Hello, Midnight TCG members. This is Midnight Fox. We're coming to you with this week's Competitive Edge podcast. This week, we're just kind of going to be doing an overview of a few different things with all the news and the WCQ and all. Uh, Sorry if you missed us last week. The Fox was on vacay, so we had a week off. Anyways, first point we were talking about. We were going to talk about mulligans. So I'll let Eddie explain a little bit about that, and then we'll discuss it.
So, the local idea from Konami is saying that for the new packs, they're going to be allowing mulligan in the new pack opening kind of deal. So, for a mulligan to occur, you have to draw your cards, because I'm going to use the Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering setup. In Magic, you're allowed to draw your 7 cards, and then you look at your 7 cards, and you go, well, I don't like this hand, so I'm a mulligan. And shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. You can draw your 7 cards.
Mind you, that's only one mulligan.
Once. You can mulligan again, but at the cost of dropping 1 card and drawing 6. Now, for Yu-Gi-Oh! Sake, if we're looking at this from... Because right now this is just going to be for the new packings, and not being... As far as we know right now, it's not going to be pulled into, like, the YCS or anything like that into actual competitive play. For the mulligan idea in Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's a bad idea. Because, as we already know, a lot of decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Require that, like, open God hand kind of thing. And allowing either player to be able to get that second chance of opening that God hand deal, bad. Very, very bad for the game. But, I digress.
And see, that's where I was going to go on that. I kind of don't agree with that, because that really does dip into the game. Because, like, over in Magic, you have mana costs and all. So you can tap and get rid of some mana and stuff. So I think if you're going to do a mulligan, you should lose like 2,000 or 3,000 life points. If they're going to allow that into it, people can still God hand in a sealed play pack, especially with programs like Dueling Network and Dev Pro, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro around. They already know how these cards are going to interact, so when they start pulling their cards, they get a good feel of what they want to put together. So,
Yeah.
In our game, just dropping it and drawing a new hand, you can still God hand and still, if you're good enough, win in 1 to 2 turns in a sealed pack play, probably. That's my thoughts on it. And so I would say that if we were to look at it in Yu-Gi-Oh!, I would look at making it a life point cost to allow the mulligan, because just dropping your cards, the graveyard and the remove from play is just as important now as your deck and your hand. So it's not going to hurt you to drop anything in the graveyard.
Screech! Hold on a second. There's a lot of incorrectness going on here.
Of course.
I fail to have the article open, and that could be our faults, so we apologize. But I'm pretty sure that the mulligan for Yu-Gi-Oh! Will be only in sealed play, which Eddie mentioned, and also once a duel, or no, once a match thing, I think. Like, you can only do it, no, maybe once a duel. But you can't. There will be no gameplay beforehand. Just like in Magic, there's no gameplay beforehand, so there's no cards in the graveyard or anything.
The current rule is that it is once per match. After you draw your first 5 cards, but before anyone starts, you can decide whether you put your hand back or redraw another 5 cards or not.
Yes.
And this is for sealed play only right now.
Yeah.
Now, granting, it's for sealed play. Could it come over to actual gameplay? I would say no because of how broken and stupid it can be. But
Yeah, I think I misinformed that, but still, I mean, even in sealed play, I'd say at least some kind of life point, where you're losing some kind of life points, because most of us won't have a problem with dropping a hand if it's a dead hand. I think it really needs to be a choice. Do I want to lose some life points to get this chance at a second chance at a god hand?
because here's what it is. Here's the exact mechanics. You only get one redraw per match. Each duelist must decide if they would like to redraw their starting hand after, and it's underlined after they draw their initial 5 cards, but before the duelist who is going to draw their cards first of the duel. In other words, you do it when there are 5 cards in your hand, not 6. The duelist who will go first in the duel decides whether to redraw first, and the duelist who goes second decides whether to redraw after the first duelist has decided. If the duelist who goes first decides not to redraw their hand, they then cannot decide to redraw after the second duelist has decided to redraw or not. When a player decides to redraw, the duelist places their starting 5 cards on the bottom of their deck in any order. The duelist then draws 5 new cards from the top of their deck. See, in Magic, I know you go mulligan, put the cards on the top of your deck, shuffle, draw the 7. After the 5th card is drawn for the new hand, the duelist then shuffles their deck using the normal deck shuffling policy. In competitive play, you should know on your score pad whether you or your opponent have used your redraw or not this match, such as by writing redraw used at the top. This is so you don't forget if it's been used or not. And then it just goes on blah 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 with other stuff. Other non-important, non-essential thingies.
Well, and I guess we should call it right too, because they're making a point here. It looks like I'm reading articles as well. Thank you for the link, Eddie.
Okay.
That it's being called the redraw rule. So we're just calling it mulligan because we played games for a long time now, and the only version of this that we've known has been called the mulligan. But for us, it'll be the redraw rule. And I also like how you went ahead and read the part where it suggests that the players, if their opponent used the redraw in one of the duels, that they write it on their score sheet.
That way they can't
so somebody.
That way they can't go, oh yeah, I didn't use my redraw when they actually did, and go, and I'm going to do it again. Yeah,
exactly. But to touch on a point that Ben made, he said that he thinks that there should be a life point payment. Maybe that's a better argument if they were trying to decide to bring it to constructed. But in sealed play, I don't mind this redraw rule they're wanting to, or it looks like they are going to be implementing. So because it's my argument here is this: listen, when you're playing constructed, that's your deck, your cards, excuse me, built exactly the way you want it. Whether or not you have a budget you're keeping to, the cards that you have at your disposal are put into that deck in any recipe you wish. So there's no need to cushion your draw, because you built that deck. It should draw the way you built it to draw. Whether you built the deck poorly or not, that's a different story. They can't really reward or cushion that aspect for you. I mean, that's another thing that separates players, is your ability to build a functioning deck. But in sealed play, this really does come down to the luck of the draw. Like, what packs are you handed, and how lucky are you to get the really quality cards? Like in Battle Pack 1 sealed tournaments, players were saying that Gorz is the best card in that format. I've heard that from a numerous amount of players. And then to hear in the actual sealed tournament that we had here in the States, that one guy opened out of his 10 packs 2 Gorzes. I mean, that's incredible. It's the best card, and you get it. So, like, that guy is initially going to be in a better position than you, because he has Gorz, and what does Gorz allow you to do? It allows you to be non-committal, And so you just wait for your opponent to invest on the field, and then you punish him for it, because in constructed, there's less answers that your opponent has to address a Gorz with. And if you have 2, your odds of drawing it are better. So like I understand the redraw because you're not you're controlling how you build a deck after you're given cards, but those cards aren't cards that you're choosing. You know, so it makes sense for the sealed, and I don't think I would mind that whatsoever. And it's only once per match. It's not like in Magic, you know, where they can do it every duel in a match. I don't know if they call it a duel, but you know, every time they play best of 3, they can mulligan. You know, the negative side to that, of course, is the more you mulligan, because you can. It's not just one mulligan. You can mulligan several times, but every time you do, you lose a card in your hand. If you start with 7, you go to 6, you go to 5, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. I think the only time you can maintain the same amount of cards you shuffled in on a mulligan is if your opponent's mulligan, or he's using his mulligan as well, and you both agree to allow each other, you know, to either keep the same or go down.
Yeah,
but
like if we're gonna go like to bring, because we've already got this theory in play now of bringing the redraw / mulligan into Yu-Gi-Oh. Fox did make a good point on saying life points. I would say instead of like the 2000, I would go steep with it. That way it makes it to where it's like this redraw, it makes you have to think of, do I really want to do this or not? I would say make the opponent start with half the life points.
Well,
I don't know if I go that steep, but I would definitely say some kind of life point cost if you decide to go with a redraw. I mean that's just kind of evening out the game and just not saying, okay, well, this hand is horrible, I'm going to redo this, and yes, it's only once per match, but that match can be the deciding factor, best 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, maybe even if it's just 1,000 points, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pay 1,000 points, I'm going to use my redraw for this match. Okay, fine.
Well, that's not fair, though. I mean, even though you're being given the opportunity to get a better hand, to say that you're going to lose life points, it automatically puts you in the TV version of Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, even if you're not halving your life points to 4,000, even if you're losing 2,000 or 1,000, like I have always been of the school of thought that life points mean 0 until you have 0. Use them accordingly. You know, they're as important to you as your cards and how you use them to win a game. Like Gorz is a perfect example of how life points mean 0. In most points of a game, because you're willing to take that damage to gain field presence and take control of the game, and that's what Gorz does, and that's what your life points do. And so, like, you immediately, like, what if Gorz is in your deck in that situation? You know, the later it becomes that you draw him, the more ineffective a card in your deck is, because. And what if you have cards that cost life points or cost life points as a payment to activate? Then those cards are become more and more ineffective and detrimental to your game. So, like, I wouldn't agree with that. Like, and I also don't think it should come to constructed play in the first place, because I think the only real way to put, like, a cost to make the player think is the way Magic does it. I think they have it very correct, which is you lose a card every time you mulligan. Well, in Yu-Gi-Oh, like, that's going to become very, very, very... I don't think you can do it in Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know. Because, like, in Magic, the reason why they have the mulligan, in my opinion, because I don't know the game and I won't pretend to be preaching exact truths, is they have lands to account for. And so, like, if you open a hand, you know, and you have cards and spells with high summon, or, what do they call it, casting costs, you need manas. And so if you open up all manas, you're given that kind of redraw to soften that and let you draw actual spells with the manas. Or what if you draw all spells and you can't cast them because you have no manas? Like, it makes sense in that the deck is 20 cards larger, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but compare the numbers and, you know, how things draw in Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, and you'll see a difference. So again, I'll just state that it makes complete sense and sealed because it's not your cards. The contents of your deck are not known to you before you sit down, or I'll say before you drive there. Like, it's, you find out when you get there. You know, in Constructed, you know exactly what you're going to play because you have it built before you leave the house. There's no need to give you that ability to get a new hand.
Okay, well, I don't know. I still think, I guess we have to agree to disagree on that point.
And that's cool, yeah.
I still think that you could still God Hand, and it really does make you think out your plays if you know in order to use that redraw, you're going to have to pay some life points. And maybe that puts you at a disadvantage, but then again, that's more of the strategy in the game. Even in
Here you go. Here you go. This is the perfect solution, I think. And just to try to speed this up, because Eddie wants to move to the next topic. I know a way that doesn't affect the player's starting position regarding their hand size or their life points, and it makes perfect sense. Here it is. If I want a mulligan, I have to tell you I want a mulligan, and only if you agree to do it as well can we mulligan.
So
Does that make perfect sense?
Both players agree to mulligan at the same time.
That's the only way you can do it.
I think that would actually work in a solo play and without costing life points, and that would give both players advantage. So yeah, I mean, in that regard, yeah, that could probably work out pretty well. So
let's stick with the Konami information and go with that organized play update.
So the next one we were going to cover, now that we've went over mulligans and tissed and tassed over the thoughts on that, is the new organized play, and this was on their blog. Basically it reads, with 2012-13 WCQ season over as of this weekend, Konami Digital Entertainment will be introducing 4 new organized play programs and special events. In the coming months, you're going to see a new local level championship series, monthly tournaments with special prizes, and demos for new players, a brand new Dragon Duel Championship series, and a whole lot of cool stuff going down for dual fans spectating the WCSs at Bally's Las Vegas. First up, the official tournament store championships. Every 2 months, hundreds of select official tournament stores across North America, Central America, and South America will hold in-store championship tournaments open to all duelists. Like regional qualifiers and YCS events, OTS championships will be Tier 2 competitive tournaments. The winner of each championship will score an exclusive OTS championship game mat, and the top 2 finishers will be awarded invites to their WCQ. So for those players who can't get to the regionals, this still gives them the opportunity to go to their local level, try out their decks, and if they do good and they have a good enough record over 2 months, still get a WCQ invite. For some players, budget does run it. My thoughts on this is good. Some players, the budget does run into, well, I'm not going to go spend an hour to 2 hour drive to go to a regionals if I don't think this deck is good enough. And like the diversity at the local level, some players might have a better chance of getting WCQ invites. So a player who is on a budget might be more willing to go to local tournaments and try to maintain a 2-month high so that they get a WCQ invite. And that player who's on a budget then, knowing they're going to a WCQ, might be willing to make that investment to go wherever that event is, which from the way it reads, it's going to be whichever one is closest to them. So, like I'm in Indiana, I would probably get an invite, would have been to Chicago, because that's the closest one that's been to me.
Aren't they supposed to be having one in Indianapolis soon?
I haven't looked at events lately, but I'll go over why when we get into the WCQ Chicago. But I really think this is really a neat idea, and it does give people a reason to start going back to their local card shops, and Konami kind of rewarding the local card shops. I think with Walmart and other stores like Target selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards, a lot of love got lost to our local stores, and I've seen quite a few close. This gives people incentive to go back to their local stores and participate in events. Yeah, they're probably already there, but if you're already there, you're more likely to spend money at their store than you are to go to Walmart if you want them to stick around and still be a place to go to get qualifying. Because I know the first store I ever went to, I went to for 3 years. he just closed down because everybody would go to Walmart, buy their cards there, and then come to his store and play. So, it's kind of letting the Yu-Gi-Oh players know, hey, you want this to stay in your area? Come on and play in this tournament that can get you a chance to go to the WCQ. That's something we've not had in Yu-Gi-Oh since its inception, is a chance to go to a YCS. This doesn't get you YCS, but a WCQ without going to a regionals. So this kind of gives back to your actual hobby stores. I like the idea, and I like the more diversity you're going to see at your local level versus going to a regional. But on the flip side, that could also backfire, and then everybody's running Dragon Rulers or Prophecy at locals. And then you're just like, okay, why am I playing this game? But anyways, enough of that rant. Eddie, your thoughts?
Well, I like how you mentioned that there at the end of the everybody running X deck or whatever at the time, because that's what you a lot of the times run into when you go to these World Championship area match deals, is you get those players who are going to be running the top tier decks. Yeah, sure, people want to go to the locals to have a fun time and things like that. And some want to play casually, some want to play more competitively. But if you're going to have it to where you can do this, you're going to more than likely start seeing more players start playing those competitive decks so that they can prep themselves for those big matches that are coming up. But it's not a bad thing that this comes around, because it gets more players involved, more players playing locally, whatever. But it's also not a good thing because it may drive those fun, casual players away. So it's a double-ended sword.
But, the other thing is unlike driving all the way to, say, Columbus, Ohio from where I live, it's about a 2-hour drive. It's less of an investment to go to your local card shop and play it over 2 months than it is to make that long drive and not know whether you're just going to bomb out or whether you actually have a chance. So it's kind of a tip the scale thing. Darned if you do and darned if you don't. What's your thoughts, Genzo?
Okay, so first I wanted to touch on 2 points of misinformation, but you actually cleared up one, which was you were saying that you can get invites to YCSs in the WCQ, but just like you mentioned, you won't win invite to a YCS with this tournament. Yeah. The second one still needs to be cleared up, which is the article actually says every 2 months, which means this is going to be once every 2 months. It'll be one tournament. You won't have to maintain any level of play over 2 months. It's just every 2 months there will be a tournament at your local, if it's one of the select tournament locations. So there's that. That would just be hard to. I don't think they could sell that anyway. Like a 2 month series where you have to kind of stay. I don't know if that would work. Not in the Yu-Gi-Oh community anyway. But yeah, that's what it says. Every 2 months, hundreds of select official tournament stores across certain locations will hold in-store tournament or championship tournaments.
Okay, so, I misread that. I was thinking it's 2 month standings. I misread that.
I think I have a lot to say about it, but I don't know how to say it, or I haven't really processed the information right. So I'll just talk kind of the small, I really, this tells you how long I've been in the game, and if you remember this, it'll tell you how long you've been in the game and make you sigh, probably. But back in the day, hobby shops meant a little more than they do now. How many times are you on a forum, whatever forum it is, and somebody says, hey, I did this with my deck at locals, and people are like, locals, who cares, right? Granted, not everybody's locals is terrible or bad, or you don't learn anything, you don't gain anything from it, but that's kind of the general consensus amongst competitive players anyway, is they don't care about your successes at your locals. So, but back in the day, I remember locals, being a little more worth something a little more than that, especially when you had individual kind of groups, teams in quotes, that would compete against other shops, maybe 30 minutes, hour and a half away from each other, But also, Konami, or Upper Deck at the time, I should say, had the retail and hobby boxes. Like, if you remember certain packs like Legacy of Darkness, for instance, the 000 secret rare was Yatagarasu, and I think it had 100 or 105 cards, something like that. Whatever the last card in the set was, that was Injection Fairy Lily. They were both secret rares, but to get the Yata, I think you had to get the hobby box, and to get the Injection Fairy Lily, you had to go to a store like Toys R Us or Walmart or something like that to get the retail box. Because the hobby boxes had 24 packs, and the retail boxes had 32 packs, 32 or 36, something like that. But I mean, so they made an effort to actually make, the hobby, make sure that people were going to the hobby stores in general, like card stores, comic stores, wherever they were holding them at. But, I thought that was a bad idea because it forced you to go to two different areas to have a chance at getting cards if you were the pack opening kind of guy. But I think it's a good thing, in my opinion. I think that's the one thing that's kind of like resonating in me, is like it brings a certain value to the local level, because I mean, I have faith in the people I play with on the local level, like I know their abilities, and I know, and it's great, because we know each other and we can be honest with each other and be like, hey, that was ridiculous. Why would you ever make that play? Or, hey, man, that was great. Let's share that information amongst each other. So, there are like pockets all over the country. And I'm only speaking for us because I live in the States, but like there are pockets in probably every state where there are a group of like quality players who could benefit from this as well. Like some of the players who are kind of like distressed with the game at the moment. They don't want to go travel. Like for me, like I'd say the closest regional I could go to right now is about 50 minutes to an hour away. So like, but I can go to a local store like 30 minutes away. It's closer, and if I have the chance to get a WCQ invite, well, why wouldn't I go to that? Because I initially know, because I am aware that local levels are quite easier than even a regional. So I don't know. Like the one thing that kind of scares me is the fact that what if you're one of these players who has this deck who's like, I think it'll do well. Go to your local level, and it may not be a competitive level, and you win. You get your invite through this. What do they call it? OTS championship. And then you actually go to WCQs, with the wrong sense of exactly where you're at. So that's like the downside to it. But like the upside is, hey, what does everybody want? They want a diverse meta that can still be competitive. And that's the one thing that locals will always offer you, because the majority of local players who play locally, and that's their thing, you're going to see a wide array of decks, which can be a problem for competitive players. Because the one thing that competitive players say they hate the most is formats with a bunch of different decks that can do well. Why? Because it's harder to side deck against them when you run in X deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's benefits and negatives to it, just like anything, really. You know what I mean? You can find, good things and bad things about anything you discuss, really. But I think I like the idea initially. Like, I really think it's cool that they're trying to bring some value to the local store.
That, and they're giving out mats too, special mats for it. So I mean, they're starting to show a little love back to the local level, where it should be.
And also, they're going to put a little pride in earning a mat, I guess. Yeah. There hasn't been pride in earning a mat in a long time. Like, I want to say probably since 2005, 2006. Because now you don't have to earn a mat. You can just go buy them. You can trade for them. You can get a mat from a sneak preview. So hey, at least for like the first month or two, these OTS championship maps are going to be they're going to have some sentiment to them, I think, because the only way you'll be able to get them at first will be to win them.
Well, and the new Dragon Duel Championships events too, kind of liking that, because my son is still young and my other boys are, and they all enjoy the game. So it gives them a chance to play with kids their own age who don't know all the chains, all the ins and outs. And they still have a competitive chance. I mean, yeah, there are little 9 and 10-year-old kids who could probably outplay some of us. But a lot of those are few and far between. So it gives them a chance to draw in the younger crowd and keep them. And as they get older, maybe learn some of the more meta decks and all. but still give them a chance at events, because they have been doing the Dragon Duels, but it looks like they're doing a little bit more for them now at like WCQs and regionals and stuff.
I will say, I know it's off topic, but I think that's probably one of the best things that Konami has done in my eyes, really, is separating the players. Like, I'm sure, again, like, you can find goods and bads, whatever, but I just think it was a very, very smart thing for them to do, to give the 13 unders a place to play away from, like, if you think about it, the majority of people who play Yu-Gi-Oh! And are competitive players aren't the kids that people would like to think this game is geared to. It's actually college kids, and high school kids, and even older than that, guys with families. Like, I'd say the average age would be around 20 to 30, to be honest, for the majority of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. So,
and I know personally, I hate even at local levels going and having to win against a young kid. So these kids getting a chance to play against each other, then they can talk a little smack back and forth, and it's all fun and play for them. Not sitting there and you got this outrageous deck, and you're like, I'm gonna pounce on this kid, and I feel like crap for it.
Yeah, I think it's more inviting for them as well, and because they're not just sitting there going, okay, I don't have a playmat unless it's one of the paper ones from the no,
Yes.
Eddie, no. But it's not one of the paper ones from a structure deck, and they're sitting across from 25-year-old guy who's got a card in hand shuffling problem, and he's twitching, and he's got a playmat and all these dice and stuff. But yeah, I did want to go ahead and shout that out because I think, as you mentioned, it is relevant to this OTS.
Yeah. So, final topic: the WCQ in Chicago. He who shall not be named won it. And now that we're past that, something we were probably all kind of expecting, at least 27 out of the top 28 were Dragon Rulers. The 28th was Spellbook. But, my gosh. That just goes to show you. I've been talking about this, I think, for 3 podcasts. I don't know the skill of some of the players there, but that deck allows... You could misplay so many times and still win. The only thing I'll say is that mirror matches were probably some of the longer played out matches. Because it would just go to who knew the game better, who knew what plays to set up, and actually who drew the better hand. And who had the outs in their side deck. But
it becomes more of a resource game, which is kind of the way you want the game to be played. Because then it focuses more on decision making.
It is sad. I mean, we thought it was bad to see almost 50% be Mermail in the top 32. But to see 27 out of the top 28 decks be Dragon Rulers, that means over 75% of the decks that topped were Dragon Rulers.
96%.
86%. There you go.
96. 96%. 27 out of 28 is 96%.
I'm talking about out of the top 32.
Well, we don't know the top 32. We just know the top 28 at this point. Well, from the last thing I've seen. I don't know if they've updated the site.
They did update it. Let me pull that up while we let Eddie talk.
I'm more of the mindset of with the WCQ YCS thing going on that happened this weekend. It's
WCQ.
over. It's wrapped. Yeah, it's over and it's wrapped up. From this, I'm like I've been saying it. I've got this sense of Dragon Ruler's going to get cut off at the knees because of how dominant they were. I mean, 20 out of the top 28, you had 27 of those decks be Dragon Rulers. Why? Why? I mean, I know why, but it's like, why? And for that matter, if we want to go into the semantics of it all, or the in-depth details of it all, I'm glad to see that Prophecy got second, because it was like you think about it was like that little deck that could, because it's like you don't expect a deck when it's that stacked against the odds. You don't expect something to come up and actually go, well, hey, it made it here. But I digress, regress, and progress and process, whatever.
What about you, Genzo? What's your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are this. I think it was everyone's thought that Dragon Ruler would dominate. I don't know if, anybody would be bold and brash enough to say that they knew for a fact that Dragon Rulers would have, encompassed 96% of, a percentage of decks. 27 out of 28. That's no joke. I think the biggest surprising factor to me is, from that number, 28, so we're missing 4 decks of the top 32, but if I'm not mistaken, they did a top 64 cut. So that makes the numbers less, how do you say, impactful? I mean, the fact that 27 are still there means that the number's still going to be incredibly high. And some of those 27 Dragon Ruler players probably beat a Dragon Ruler to get to that top 32 cut. So it just surprised me how little Prophecy was represented. I still think it's probably the most unfair deck, just individually looking at the deck and how it plays the game. But it just shows you, my whole thing about Prophecy this whole time, even when I'm sitting here going, I don't like the deck, is because the deck loses to a single card. Eradicator, Epidemic Virus, just wow. And then if you have the random rogue matchup and you come up against, like a well-made and efficiently made Shockmaster, it doesn't outright beat the deck, but it slows the deck down tremendously and allows the player controlling the Shockmaster to do some real damage, if not win the game. And then also if you come up against a random Naturia Beast, that just beats you. Sure, what you have 2 Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. I think it's like the common, trap tech in the deck. Obviously, if you have Solemn Judgment or Solemn Warning set, I've seen a lot of Prophecy decks running, those 4 traps, and to kind of help them address the problem cards that are there. But I don't know. I just never liked that.
The top 32 list. Apparently, I found all the players. But here's one that's going to blow your mind that was in the top 32. Wait for it. Madolches.
Hey, Madolches represent. That's all I gotta say.
Madolches have to be the most annoying deck, but it's nice to see something like that make it. But they are annoying. Their ability to shuffle back into the deck. Keo, thank you for ruining Madolches for me.
I will say this, I was watching some of the information, and I did see that some decks like, I can't remember what the name of the article they placed on the site when they were updating over the last 2 days, but it mentioned an anti-meta deck, which is kind of interesting. And they also mentioned, I want to say maybe even several Dark World decks. So, it's pretty cool on one hand to see, hey, Dragon Ruler had 27 out of 28 places in the top 28, which isn't even a real number. It's just what we have. But I'd be interested to see the top 64. I don't think top 64 is relevant, but if they're going to make the cut top 64, then it is relevant. So I wonder how many of those decks actually squeezed in. Like, granted, a lot of people like to think they have a good tech or a good deck that can combat the best decks, but they're probably going to lose, and that's what was shown in the results of the tournament. With Dragon Ruler not just dominating, but outright not being competed with, really. But I'd be interested to see some of those decks, not necessarily the list, just the names, like the numbers that go with the decks, like how many actually squeezed in there, and then I would want to see the decks and see, how they made it, how they made that possible. But as Eddie said, I want to squeeze this out real quick. It is interesting that the one prophecy deck amongst 27 Dragonlord decks is the other final deck. That is pretty impressive.
Just goes to show you that the other guy knew his deck. No comment from the peanut gallery.
Or he didn't get hit with enough Eradicator epidemic viruses as well, so the opponent didn't draw it. So yeah.
Well, anyways,
But oh yeah, congrats to the 6 representatives of North America, and good luck on your travels to Vegas. And please take a title home.
yeah. Not gonna say. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. I'm not gonna say anything else. Anyways. So tonight, kind of forgot in the beginning. This has been Genzaki recording, and Genzo
No pink shorts.
and Eddie Phoenix
Meep.
doing the Competitive Edge podcast, and we'll see you next week.